ici, ils scannent tout.
With the release of Lupin back in January of this year, it didn't take long for the French thriller to become one of the most well-received shows of the year. In fact, its viewership of around 70 million Netflix users placed it in direct competition with other popular shows such as The Queen's Gambit and Bridgerton. And with part 1 of the first season ending on one heck of a cliffhanger, there's no doubt that fans of Lupin are itching for part 2. But what do we know about part 2 of the heist drama? And what can we expect to see from it as far as context is concerned? Well, whether you're a fan of the franchise or just want to know more about one of the most popular French shows to date, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore everything there is to know about the upcoming second part of Lupin. So strap yourselves in and get ready for the adrenaline-fueled ride as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. The renewal of part 2. Although Lupin was supposed to launch with a grand total of 10 episodes in total, newfound fans of the show will be the first to tell you that this was far from the case. You see, due to massive delays brought on by the coronavirus pandemic, the showrunners of Lupin had a pretty tough decision to make. They could either go ahead and delay the release of the show indefinitely until filming and post-production could be wrapped, or they could split the first season in 2 separate parts. Suffice to say, they decided to go with the latter option, knowing full well that a complete delay would be the wrong choice to make. This led to part 1 of the first season releasing on Netflix in January of this year, in the form of a measly 5 episodes. But luckily, for longtime fans of the novel series of the same name that Lupin is based on, these 5 episodes were more than enough to catch the attention of others. The pre-release was even enough to garner enough success to be compared to the likes of Money Heist, which has gone on to become the most famous Spanish show in the history of the streaming platform. So now that you know a bit more about the reason to split the season into a first and second parts, you'll be happy to hear that the initial plan is full steam ahead. Netflix originally greenlit the franchise for a whole first season after all, meaning that there was no need for fans to wait to hear whether the franchise had been renewed or not. In other words, part 2 of season 1 of Lupin was always going to show up, regardless of how trendy the show was upon its release. What fans didn't know, however, was when they would be able to set their eyes on the rest of season 1. But luckily for us, we now know the answers to this question. The release date of part 2. As we mentioned earlier, the coronavirus pandemic has really changed things for the worse. Not only did the spread of COVID-19 cause countless deaths and result in a massive amount of jobs being lost, it also had the effect of bringing the filming industry to its knees. Although you may not be able to remember the days before the pandemic ruled our lives, it consisted of us knowing next to everything there was to know about the upcoming installments of our favorite shows. Renewal and release dates were made public knowledge well in advance, with fans sometimes getting incredibly hyped a full year before this continuation took place. But then filming sets all across the world closed down for a couple of months with the intention of curbing the spread of the dangerous virus. And even when these national lockdowns came to an end, filming had changed forever with a number of regulations and precautions being introduced for the safety of everyone involved. This essentially meant that as soon as a single member of the cast or crew of a show received a positive test, the set of that show would be quarantined for a number of days, resulting in more than a fair share of delays along the way. And since these delays meant that more often than not, the show couldn't be finished in time for its already announced release date, another decision was made. Streaming services and networks alike began to hold back on release dates information until the series in question had wrapped both filming and post-production. It was said to be better to keep fans in the dark than to excite them with a date that could change in the future and result in disappointment. And it's for this reason that fans of part 1 of Lupin had absolutely no idea when part 2 would be making its appearance on the streaming platform. But fear not, Lupin lovers, as the wait for us is not going to be that long. Since all 5 remaining episodes of the first season have already been filmed and are close to being wrapped up in post-production, Netflix has announced part 2's release date, which is set for this coming Friday, June 11th. The returning cast of part 2. Since you now know that the initial plan for the franchise was to release a first season in its entirety, it shouldn't surprise you to hear that your favorite cast members will be returning for part 2 in the next couple of days. So prepare yourselves, as Omar Sy, who is probably best known for his portrayal of Asani Diop in the series, is about about to become your obsession once more. There's no way that the franchise could possibly continue without him, as it's because of the Sherlock-esque attitude of man that Lupin became so big in the first place. Ludivine Sagnier will also be reprising her role as Arsène's wife, Claire, who is as smart as she is beautiful. And to complete the family, there's no doubt that Ethan Simone will also be returning as the couple's 14-year-old son, Raoul. Other than the flagship family of the title, we can expect an appearance from her Pierre as Hubert Pellegrini, Clotilde Hesme as Juliette Pellegrini, Nicole Garcia as Anne Pellegrini, Antoine Guy as Benjamin Farrell, Shireen Boutella as Lieutenant Sophia Bakassem, and Soufiane Garab as Youssef Gerdera. Since no important deaths rock part 1 of the first season, it goes without saying that we won't be expecting any drastic changes to be made to the casting of the show, but we're thinking that the same cannot be said for the upcoming second season. In fact, it wouldn't surprise us to hear that one or two of these names will be lacking when the second season finally comes along. So maybe it's time you started preparing yourselves for the worst, what you might have missed in part 1. While it may be true that part 1 of Lupin's first season wasn't exactly released too long ago, it goes without saying that a recap is most definitely in order. Quite a few important shows released on Netflix between now and then after all, and since it's easy to forget what may or may not have happened, we believe it's better to be safe than sorry. And for those of you who have yet to watch Lupin, what on earth are you waiting for? If you fall into this category, be warned that some spoilers are coming up ahead, so it might be best that you pause the video and start binging as soon as possible. We'll be right here where you left us once part 1 is finished. Now that the warning is out of the way, let's get right to the juicy bits. The first part of Lupin Season 1 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger with Arsène's son Raoul being kidnapped by one of Hubert Pellegrini's henchmen during a family trip to a quaint little seaside town. Remember, we also come to learn that it was Hubert who framed Arsène's father, Babacar, for stealing a multi-million-dollar necklace, which resulted in him being sent to prison where he apparently committed suicide. So while the series is most definitely focused on some of Arsène's most incredible exploits, such as the staging of an impressive jewelry heist at the Louvre Museum to the kidnapping of a police commissioner, it must be said that all in all, it comes down to the relationship between him and Hubert. And to make matters worse, it looks like Youssef has finally caught up to Arsène as well, although we're still not sure whether he will be willing to land the final blow on our hero. What we can expect from part 2. From the official trailer of part 2 that was released a few weeks ago, it looks like things are about to get a lot worse for Arsène Diop. Not only does Pellegrini still have his son, the entire police department is looking for him, with his name and face being plastered across every wall in the city. As such, we expect that he will be disappearing for a while in an attempt to get some much needed space between him and the pursuing investigators. We also expect that he will be formulating a plan to rescue his son, and have a feeling that Claire will be involved in some way. We see her talking to the police and informing them that Arsène will not be back after all, which makes us think that she will be attempting to work them from the inside. But at the same time, we see glimpses of a plan introduced by Pellegrini. It would seem that with Arsène gone for quite some time, his impatience has gotten the better of him. This is why Hubert has organized a spectacular event that is sure to catch Arsène's attention. Will he fall into this trap, which is clearly making use of the name of Lupin to attract him? Or will he be able to use this to his advantage? Well, we can't be sure about what to expect in the future. We believe that the show will continue to establish this relationship of hatred between Arsène and Hubert, with Arsène being pushed to the brink of overstepping the bounds of his gentleman burglar character. We hope that he retains this image of his while showing the world who Pellegrini actually is in the most spectacular way possible. That's what we believe the teaser for part 2 of Lupin revealed once and for all. But what do you think? Be sure to let us know in the comment section down below.